The chandeliers shimmered like frozen constellations above the grand dining hall, casting a golden warmth over polished glasses and whispered laughter. Waiters glided between tables in crisp black and white, balancing trays that sparkled with silver. And in the very center of it all, at table 6, sat Ethan Ward, the man who owned half the skyline of the city. His tailored navy suit caught the light like silk, his cufflinks quietly gleaming, and his presence bent the air around him with authority. The night was important. The investors across from him had traveled from Tokyo, Zurich, and Dubai. In less than 20 minutes, a $200 million deal would be sealed. Everything depended on this dinner, every gesture, every second, every smile. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. And those plans walked toward him in the form of a nervous new waitress with trembling hands and a knot in her throat. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the hidden power of small moments that change lives forever, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this remind the world that humanity still matters. The waitress's name was Lila Hart, 22, newly hired, and still learning the rhythm of fine dining. Her father was in the hospital, her rent was late, and tonight was her first full shift. Her eyes darted to the glittering table of executives, her breath shallow as she balanced a tray with champagne flutes. She didn't know who Ethan Ward was, only that the man in the dark suit looked like he'd never been told no in his life. As she approached, she noticed the tension. Ethan's jaw was clenched. His eyes were fixed on the clock behind her, impatient, sharp, restless. One of the investors had just made a small joke about charity foundations, and everyone laughed, except him. Lila placed the glasses carefully, but one of them tilted ever so slightly, catching the edge of his sleeve. A thin stream of champagne splashed on his wrist. The room fell silent. The air froze. Her heart stopped. I'm so sorry, sir, she began, but Ethan's look cut through her apology. It wasn't anger exactly, it was something colder, sharper, the kind of disdain that made people feel small. The investors murmured something in another language, amused. The maitre d' rushed toward them, ready to save the evening, but Lila's trembling voice surprised everyone. "Sir, you need to leave," she said softly. At first no one breathed. A flicker of disbelief crossed Ethan's face, then turned into a mocking smirk. "Excuse me?" he asked, his tone soft but dangerous. The maitre d' paled. The investors looked at each other. Lila swallowed hard, tears threatening to form. "You need to leave," she repeated, her voice firmer this time. "You don't belong here like this. Not tonight." Ethan rose slowly, his chair scraping the floor. Every eye in the hall was on them. He towered over her, and for a moment the tension between them was almost electric. The maitre d' whispered frantically that she'd be fired, but Ethan's hand lifted slightly, signaling silence. Something in her eyes stopped him. There was no arrogance, no defiance, only pain, something human, something hauntingly familiar. He left, without a word. The investors were confused. The deal was left hanging. The maitre d' escorted Lila out back, his voice trembling with panic, calling her reckless, naive, ruined. She nodded silently, tears slipping down her cheeks. She didn't know why she said what she did. It wasn't anger or impulse. It was something inside her chest, something that felt like truth trying to breathe. Hours later, the dining hall emptied, and the soft hum of the city replaced the chatter. Lila sat on a bench outside, clutching her phone. The hospital had called earlier. Her father's heart monitor had faltered, and she was supposed to go see him. But she stayed for her job, for money, for survival. Now she had neither. A sleek black car stopped in front of her. The window rolled down. Ethan's face appeared, not angry, but unreadable. "Get in," he said simply. She hesitated, then obeyed. The car smelled of leather and rain. For several minutes, silence stretched between them, only broken by the hum of the engine. "You told me to leave," he finally said, eyes still on the road. "No one's ever said that to me before." Lila stared at her hands. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't know why You were right," he interrupted quietly. She turned toward him, confused. His face softened in the passing streetlights. "That dinner," he said, was for a deal that would have cost thousands of people their jobs. I kept telling myself it was business, numbers, strategy, but I saw your eyes, and suddenly I saw my own reflection in them. Cold, empty, you didn't ruin anything. You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. She blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. Ethan continued, his voice almost a whisper. You reminded me what it's like to be human. He parked the car in front of a small hospital. Lila's breath caught. How did you... He smiled faintly. You left your phone unlocked. I called the hospital. Your father's in room 214. Her eyes filled with tears. Why would you... He turned to her, his expression warm for the first time. Because sometimes even millionaires need to be told to leave, to stop, to remember what really matters. She ran inside, heart pounding, and found her father asleep but stable. The monitors beeped softly, rhythm steady. She sat beside him, holding his hand, whispering through her tears. For the first time in months, she felt peace, not fear. Outside, Ethan stood by the window, watching through the glass. Something inside him shifted that night. The deal was gone, but in its place grew something deeper, a quiet purpose. Over the next weeks, Ethan visited the hospital often, sometimes leaving flowers, sometimes paying bills anonymously. Lila tried to thank him, but he always smiled and said, "You already did." Word spread about the CEO who canceled a multi-million-dollar merger to protect his employees. The news called it ethics. His board called it madness, but Ethan called it redemption. Months later, when Lila returned to the restaurant, now promoted and more confident, she found a small envelope waiting for her at the front desk. Inside was a handwritten note. Lila, you reminded me that true strength isn't in power, it's in empathy. I'm opening a foundation for single parents and hospital care workers. I want you to lead it. Ethan, she stood there, speechless as tears blurred the ink. Around her, the chandeliers glowed just as they had that night. But this time, she wasn't trembling. She was shining. And far across the city, in a boardroom that once echoed with numbers, Ethan watched the sunrise through glass walls, feeling something richer than any deal he'd ever made. Peace. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to help us spread stories that remind the world of empathy, humility, and the beauty of second chances. Before you go, share in the comments what moment in this story moved you the most. Your words might inspire someone else to believe in kindness again, because sometimes one brave word from a stranger, like you need to leave, can change not just a moment, but an entire life.